Sauble, a noted Indian historian and author, has agreed to join us in this film on the history of Banning. So Katherine, tell us something about your reservation and also something about the Indian tribes in this area.
Well, this is the Morongo Indian Reservation now, but years ago it used to be Malki Indian Reservation, and I remember being here at that time, and I remember all the things that happened here when this was first put aside as a reservation for the Cahuilla people in 1876. And from there on, the people that lived here, and as I remember, they were very industrious. This area was not barren the way it is now. They had trees here, they had apricot trees, they had almond trees. They harvest those every year. They had their own cutting plant here for the apricots, and they had leaders that were very important people in my lifetime. And one of them was Bartasal Rice. He was the head of that. It was called the Malki Indian Fruit Association. And they shipped fruit from here to all parts of the country for the trains that were available to them. And it was very, very industrious times. And now when you look at this reservation, it's gone to pot. I don't know why, but I guess the younger ones don't care to work. But that's the way it was before. And I thought maybe as I grew up, I was raised traditionally. I was born up here. I'm a mountain Cahuilla. I was born up on the mountains. I moved down to Palm Springs when I was 3 years old. And then when I grew up in Palm Springs, I came here as a bride 49 years ago. And those are the things that I've seen since I've been here. Before that, we used to come up here and help work. My father worked on the dryer here, and so I know the changes I've seen in this area, how it was and how it is today. It was beautiful, just like the way the town of Banning was, with all those plants that, you know, apricot blossoms, almond blossoms, beautiful area. That's the way it was all through this pass at one time.
Kathy, how do we govern the Indian reservation now?
Well, each reservation has their own elected chairman, and they also have the committee to work with them. And it all depends on the reservations that were set aside. This is allotted reservation partially, where the residential area is. My reservation on the mountain is held tribally. It's not allotted. It cannot be sold without the consent of the whole general council. But that's the difference here. So here they can sell a portion of their land. They can do whatever they want to do with it.
Katherine, I want to ask you a question for my information as much as anybody else's. Let's say this reservation was created, I think, in around 1875, 1876, in that era. And the Indians had all this land that we see around here. How did they finally wind up down into this little reservation?
Well, that is the way it was before. A lot of the Indian reservations were fortunate. The reservations were set aside right in their own area. But some of them were moved aside, and this here was the home of the past Cahuilla. And so this was set aside here for them, and they had lived through here from Whitewater on up this way and up to the Palm Springs, north of Palm Springs. So they really had that in their own area here.
So they were not nomads that roamed all over?
No, no, no. They had their own stationary villages. The only time they moved up the mountains was to gather acorn or to have exchange of acorn and mesquite to the desert area. So they had their own trails where they traded and visited, and most of these trails are now into the highways, your highways, the trails that were used.
Katherine, I've known you now for 20 years or so.
Yes.
And the thing that I've always admired about you is the fact that you were a proud Indian.
Well, you know, that I think goes back to the family, the way you were raised. Like my father and my mother, especially my father, he was so proud. He used to tell us, "You're an Indian," he said, "no matter what the people call you." We were called all kinds of names, I remember as a child. walk with your head high, he said, because we were the first here, it'll never change. No matter what anybody says, you are the first. So we grew up with that we were the first. And then that's the way we were. Others never did. So that's what it was.
That was perfect, wasn't it?
That was excellent.
That was excellent, Katherine.